The early 1990s saw the rise of a little blue mammal called Sonic the Hedgehog. You've probably heard of him. He's a small pudgy guy with black eyes, and nothing will ever change that. Anyway, time continued progressing and then Sega changed that. He got green eyes, longer limbs, and full voice acting in a game. And this was because the gaming industry was dramatically changing through the 90s. And this change was sudden. A 2D platformer could be cutting edge in 1994, but 2 years later it was seen as old hat, and shortly after that it was treated as a mistake that should instead be 3D. This is the time Sonic found himself in when he jumped back into prominence with his adventure titles. But the Game Boy Advance came out shortly thereafter, and it showed people the era of 90s gaming wasn't dead, it was just mostly dead and relegated to cheap games on a handheld. It became a running joke to call the GBA a portable Super Nintendo, just since the majority of its library were either ports or games that felt like they were straight from it, even if the Game Boy Advance had far fewer buttons. But you know what else had not enough buttons? The Mega Drive controller. And that shared trait must have been enough for Sonic to jump over to the GBA with 3 new platformers and even some old games too that I am not ready to acknowledge. And this first game fits right in with his Mega Drive library. Some even call it Sonic 4 despite it being a massive step back from 3 in terms of features, visuals, and level design. But that's how I saw it back in the day, so it has some merit as a label, even if we now have an actual Sonic 4 and a better executed Sonic 4. Oh yeah, while all this was happening, Sonic made his debut on the N-Gage game deck. And it's basically the exact same game, but it has 2 screen size options, one being too small and the other being the right size but it cuts off the sides so you can't see anything, which is not ideal in a fast-paced game about reacting to things. This N-Gage version also doesn't have any GameCube compatibility or a tiny Chao garden, but I don't care about those, I'm here for the core main game. So with that conceit, this is basically the exact same game. Buttons and screen sizes aren't ideal, but you can get used to them. So even though this is a weaker version across the board, pretty much everything I say will apply to both the GBA and N-Gage versions of this game. Once we boot up a playthrough of Sonic, we immediately recognize the physics. This feels like Mega Drive Sonic. More aptly, Pocket Adventure, which I'm just mentioning now so someone won't criticize me for forgetting it, and its role in Sonic's portable history. Oh, and also the Game Gear games too, they existed. I like them too, I didn't forget it. Back then, recreating the feel of Sonic was just expected and we didn't appreciate it at all. But this was the last official Sonic game to get this right until Mania in 2017. Though once again, to avoid comments correcting me, I am aware the games weren't trying to recreate this. It's not like they dropped the ball after Advance 1. It's just that Advance 1 was really the last one to attempt this, and it really did nail it. But with a couple of decades of hindsight, this is a big win for this game. It fits right in with all the other games that we now call classic Sonic regardless of their age. And we also have the Insta-Shield here, which helps give it a real feeling of being a classic Sonic game after Sonic 3 and Knuckles. Though it is still an outlier in this classic Sonic group, and not just because of his green eyes. Each character has 2 whole buttons to use, and this will usually result in a relatively pointless physical attack or maneuver that's generally never needed and a lot less satisfying than the basic movement. These feel like they're taking inspiration from Sonic Adventure. That game had Tails and Knuckles use their namesakes as attacks on the ground. This is all recreated here, in case bouncing, flying, and gliding weren't enough, and you'd rather do stilted attacks that leave you vulnerable and locked in place. Sonic comes equipped with a somersault move that is even more forgettable, but I still kind of like it because it does look kind of cool. These moves extend to our 4th character, Amy, and her playstyle is generally slower but based around the use of her hammer, including a cool hammer jump technique. Wow, I can't believe she got to be the 4th playable 2D Sonic character. Well, hopefully the 5th one is like Knack the Weasel, since he's clearly the next biggest character in the franchise. But to get back to Amy, for people who call this Sonic the Hedgehog 4, are kind of right in some aspects, but to me it feels more apt to call this Sonic Adventure 2D edition, though this is with the caveat that all 4 playstyles go through the same levels in the same order, there's no hub world, and it's all simple beginning to end stuff and there's no emerald hunting or other weird objectives. But the adventure feeling, in particular that of the first game, seeps in everywhere it can. The designs are obvious, but it's more subtle things like the fact that we only have 2 shields here, a standard green one and an electric one that brings rings to you, but does not give you a double jump like it did in Sonic 3. And we also have the level aesthetics here which lean more closely to Adventure than the classics. Though since Adventure 1 wasn't a huge departure in visuals, this isn't as immediately obvious as it would be with later games. It's more so things like our Green Hill equivalent having a prominent beach theme, or the factory level looking more drab and, well, factory-like than being a fun colourful plant. Though at least the casino level is still a weird incomprehensible mess that makes no sense logistically. But with that gaudy exception, everything feels much more grounded here. Unfortunately, it does go to highlight that in terms of level themes, nothing is original here, which is a shame because these are usually a highlight of the series, especially early on, and outside the occasional checkerboard background things, the old Sonic games always felt fresh. But wait, I sound like a downer. I do love this game, and that's because the level design is really fun, or at worst, kind of fun after you memorize it. And the physics are exactly what they need to be to accommodate this. This is Sonic, and not a watered down spin-off, and with its 4 characters, this is one of the most replayable games in the series, and pound for pound, I find it to be one of the stronger games overall that the Hedgehog has had. But it would be even better if we just cut off the pounds that don't work, because well, this game does a lot of things wrong, and when it does, they are really wrong. Excluding weird additions like extra attacks that can be ignored, this really does feel like a classic entry. We have momentum, spin dashing, satisfying jumps and bounces, and the level design are generally tall and wide multi-tiered abominations of physics, with high, low and middle routes that drive replayability and honing skills. These paths have the expected goodies in harder to reach areas, and slower, less fun obstacles for those who fall to the bottom. On the surface, this is very textbook, and to new players it'll be a jarring mishmash of going way too fast in automated straight lines, and then slowing down to a crawl because you couldn't react to something in time. But for the people who are very familiar with this particular game, it almost never slows down. It just takes a while to get to that point. And as the biggest selling feature, it's more of the same. It fits in right with Sonic 1, 2, 3 and CD, as well as Mania now. This is just that again at times. And I'd go as far to say it feels much closer to those games than it does its 2 direct sequels for GBA, which unfortunately did not come out on the N-Gauge. If you can get in the groove and remember what's up ahead, every level, even the lesser ones, can be fun spectacles. But that's the problem. Even more so than the other games this is like, you need to know what's up ahead. The Mega Drive Sonic games got more confident in their level design as the games continued, and this ended with Sonic 3 and Knuckles having, to me, some absolutely amazing levels that perfectly balance all the core pillars of these games. If that same Sonic team went on to make Nvance, perhaps we'd see more of this quality, if not an improvement to it. But this isn't made by Sonic Team, it's made by Dimps. And to put it nicely, they're not on the same level. Stages that have sudden bottomless pits and other fatal trappings are just part of the Advance trilogy, and it's something you have to get used to. That being said, it's less bad here than it is in its sequels, since stages have more of that classic Sonic DNA to just copy, and the experimentation of later games really put a spotlight on the roughness Advance 1 was already flaunting. But at least it doesn't show itself off immediately. I'd go as far to say that this game shows no real faults within its first few stages, at least on a casual playthrough. Name aside, Neo Green Hill Zone is up there as one of the finest opening stages. It hits all the beats to a T, and it feels much more varied than it probably is due to its changing aesthetics. We get a beach opening, a more typical middle, and then we end by running on a tree's canopy, and then we fight a boss on a steel bridge. This helps set it apart from anything prior, and it gives much more visual variety than most Sonic stages. I know a lot of the middle isn't too unique, but people don't remember the middle, it's the start and ends people care about. These middle sections do at least introduce a few of the newer elements to this game. We have rail grinding, and it's poorly done and not worth commenting on, except to say it's another thing borrowed from the adventure titles, and the sequels Advance 2 and 3 do dramatically improve the way rails work. But as it stands here, it's just a pace breaker that gives you slightly different options as the two Hedgehog characters, since the other half of the roster ignore them outright. Oh, and there's these trampoline things here which are once again from Sonic Adventure, but they do at least vary up the vertical platforming a little. There are some poles here that I don't think are from Sonic Adventure, both on regular terrain and more importantly 90-degree walls. These are just another way to give us a speed boost, which isn't a unique concept, but I do like the visual flair here, and there's a brief moment where the characters pause and then speed up again, which elevates this to a slightly more spectacular spectacle. And best of all, these being in walls just adds more places we get a boost. It might seem silly at times to have so many opportunities to boost, but these become essential during Amy's slower campaign when she can't navigate much of a level. This low-key level, with few real threats and lots of variety, gives us a good time to appreciate how expressive all the characters are. They look great almost all the time. We have fun idle animations for the characters being on the ledge, and when they're hurt we really get to see it. The three non-titular characters all look great here. Look how cute Tails is when he does literally anything. Though I'm not too big on Sonic's expressions or his regular running animation. I get that he's determined, but he just looks miserable to be here. One touch I do love is that when all the characters go ball mode, we get a slight accent with a secondary colour. With Sonic, it's a slight attention to detail, and with Knuckles, he looks like an icon for Christmas with all that red and green. And on that note, Eggman is really expressive here, and this is one area that completely outdoes the 16-bit games. You can now know just how much pain he's in every time you land an attack, and that's just swell. One thing that isn't swell is how inconsistent all the boss fights here are, but I guess it wouldn't be classic Sonic if these weren't all over the place quality-wise. Moving on, the second level isn't my favourite to look at. It's just a brown background with bits of grey for variety. This looks like something you'd expect from a bad future in Sonic CD, but it definitely gets what Sonic is about more than the other stages when it comes to the actual gameplay, though the opening seconds are excluded from that because it is just a waste of time. But you know, Sonic wasn't above doing that either, so maybe this really does understand what Sonic was like. This factory has lots of variety, routes, and moments where you just get to turn off your brain and go fast for a few seconds. I was also happy to add lots to the table like spinning rods that Sonic climbs horizontally, kind of like in Hydrocity except he uses it to take the higher or lower path based on how he leaps off it. And there are these hooks that are basically these things from Angel Island but less fun. And then there's these platforms that rise after you wait on them, kind of like Oil Ocean and okay. There really isn't that much new here, is there? But it's not important. It's executed very well at least, and having all these in a single stage helps make this stage stand out mechanically from the rest of the game. If you want originality in Sonic Advance and Sonic N, look at the special stages. But don't look at the special stages. To start off with, these have, up until this point in the series, the worst way to access them. No certain number of rings, or finding one of many hidden different special stage entrances. Here, there are exactly 7 special stage springs hidden across the game, and you must find and enter each one. Sometimes it'll be in Act 1 of a stage, sometimes Act 2, sometimes both. There's no consistency, so without a guide, you just need to explore far and wide, and sometimes you'll do that and then find out you're in a level that doesn't even have one. Whoops. On the bright side, this game does use a save system, and you can use any characters across multiple runs to get these Chao emeralds, so you can just cheese it on as Tails to find everything more easily. These special stages themselves, however, are even worse than their method of finding them. These might be the worst ones in the entire series. It is without a doubt the worst of any of the games it is often compared to. Much like other ones, this is here just to be a visual spectacle, and it does show that the GBA could do 3D. But here we are falling through a tunnel and have horrible depth perception. Keep getting enough rings like the half pipe, but have it controlled infinitely worse, and with no way to accurately judge your height in relation to the rings here. Honestly, these are a blemish on the game, and even with all 7 Chao emeralds, you can't go super during regular play, which is just a buzzkill. These Chao emeralds are useless. Wait, that's just an American manual thing? Sorry, here with a PAL release we have regular Chaos Emeralds, and they are the rewards for completing test special stages. If you want a pro tip, don't even bother with these, it's not worth it. The only upside is that these are the only area in Sonic M that can be full screen, without it being harder to see than normal. In fact, these special stages force the game from letterbox to full screen, and that's a small mercy because this would be even worse without tiny resolution. These special stages really are a mistake, and it does ruin this game, but I just try to treat it as a small optional part here, so I don't become too negative. Look, I just want to be positive. We get a casino stage, and it has nothing new to the table, but I don't care. It's a Sonic casino stage. I love these, except when they're in Sonic Heroes. We have all the pinball trappings here, and I don't care that it's the least original stage in a game with almost no originality. It is fun and cool. That should be the tagline for this game. The gambling theme here does work perfectly as a segue for me to talk about one of my favourite new additions here. The question mark ring box gives you a different number of rings each time. It's fun in that very primitive part of my brain that likes numbers going up. Sometimes it'll be a small handful, and sometimes it could be like 40 whole rings, which can often lead to an extra life. Oh wait, did I say that was a new item? Silly me. That was first in Sonic Adventure. Frankly, anything that you think is new to this game was just taken from Sonic Adventure. That's probably why Super Sonic isn't playable outside a small final boss fight after beating the game as every character and having all the Chaos Emeralds. But hey, at least that means we get to fight Knuckles, sort of. At the end of the game there's a Mecha Knuckles fight that fills the role of the constant Metal Sonic likes the classic games had, and at least this was made more fun with Knuckles' larger variety of movement. The punching moves really only work well in this context, and it's much better than the actual Knuckles fights we had in the 3D games. Wow, I skipped ahead. Time to get back on track and talk about something Adventure didn't have. A snowy mountain level, goddammit. Doesn't help that both these games are abbreviated as SA. Ice Mountain is a personal favourite level of mine, but that's just because I love the snowy aesthetics. But on my first playthroughs, this is the point where the game started becoming a miserable slog. It is when the dimps, traps like bottomless pits and obstacles you couldn't see really start going from small occurrences to just being out in the open shamelessly. But it becomes a fun experience on replays or as other characters who have better movement options. Ice Mountain is very much the kind of zone where the bottom route is designed to be awful and slow, complete with obligatory water sections that Sonic fans love, but the higher paths are more fun and what you'd expect from a game starring the blue blur. It's not that the stage is especially poorly designed, it's just that it wants players to suffer on their first couple playthroughs because it's sadistic. Though if you are the type of person who plays these games only once, it would be easy to see this being the worst stage, or at least the most dramatic dip in quality. But that isn't me, and not just because I replay this game quite a bit, but I also just like snow and ice levels. Sorry, I'm part of the problem. And the swimming that everyone hates here is worth it because we get to see Tails do a really cute swimming animation. And this game added something new for a change. Knuckles can swim on the water's surface. That's neat. It's not very important, or used much, but it's neat. Though really part of my enjoyment for this level comes back to what I said earlier. There is a big quality dip around this point in the game, and while Ice Mountain is shaky in its execution, with plenty of practice it can land on the good side of that quality divide. It's just that the rest of the game is even more rough. Angel Island comes up next, and despite having the least original name here, it is probably the least derivative stage in its actual design. It's going for that temple aesthetic, but it doesn't ever lean too closely to any previous stages, name notwithstanding. I'd celebrate the originality in the level design, but this is when bottomless pits and enemies you couldn't react to become even more prominent. Maybe just go back to copying everything instead. For what it's worth, I don't hate this stage, and I've played much worse in this series, but it's also one I wouldn't miss if it was gone. It's just kind of there, and unlike the even more unfair stuff later in this game, this doesn't have a hook outside that cool Mecha Knuckles fight. If you're the kind of player who is struggling with these later levels, you'd be happy to know this game includes two nice features, one of which is an easy mode that just seems to reduce the enemy encounters, and the other is an option to disable time overs. You can now stay in any level forever. Though it's not too important throughout most of this game, these are all shorter stages and nothing like something you'd see in Sonic 3. So I can't imagine time overs being a serious issue here. But then you have Egg Rocket, and that is really designed to make players miserable in their first few playthroughs. It's full of traps constantly. This is like Metropolis, but it one-ups that by having a timer countdown and you'll fail the level if you don't make it through certain sections in time. And this is the kind of level that instead of killing you is happy to send you to a lower part of a level just to waste time. As terrible as this level is, I kind of like it. Like sure, it's got the worst layout in the game by far, but the environments and obstacles constantly change, and it truly feels like you're making your way up one of Eggman's doomsday machines. We start outside, climb our way up, and eventually end in space. Every other zone is largely static here, with Neo Green Hill Zone being the only other one to really show any sense of progress. Nothing else matches that, except here in Egg Rocket. This is all considered one act as well, so it's even more impressive. Though that isn't to excuse any of the level design, playing this stage frankly sucks, but it's at least one of those ones that sticks in my brain positively after the fact. And after this, we have one more one-act zone, though I do kind of see these as being acts 1 and 2 of each other. What can I say about Cosmic Angel? It's definitely a last level of a Sonic game. It's exactly what you'd expect, but just with more spikes everywhere. It's at least a very satisfying ending, or it would be if X Zone didn't exist. This is the real final level, and it just consists of a boss gauntlet with the Green Hill Zone Eggman fight, the Emerald Hill Zone Eggman fight, and then a new fight which is worse than both the old ones. Once you beat all that, if you did what I told you not to do, you'd get a supersonic fight which is even less worth your time. Just stop playing at Cosmic Angel, that's the real ending. Everything after is like an encore that you thought you wanted, but all the instruments are now out of tune and the singer passed out on stage. At least the final boss here gives you rings beforehand. In fact, this game is very generous with rings before bosses, and in that regard, it never makes you suffer. So good work, Dimps, you did something better than regular Sonic Team. And you know what? You did other nice stuff too. The level select here is a really nice quality of life improvement, and it lets us pick either act instead of just an act 1, and this doesn't require you beat the game first. You can restart at whatever act you were previously on, and that's just neat. It's always nice when more people can get into a game I like, and this is a really accessible starting place for what I would consider classic Sonic. Though over 20 years removed from this game's launch, I don't see this being anyone's starting point now. But as a young child, I had my older brother's Mega Drive to play, and like most young children, I'd die on Zone 2 of any of the games I was playing, and then I'd just stop playing. Sonic Advance was the game that got me to appreciate these games, and it was the first 2D Sonic I ever saw the ending of. It is a sentimental favourite for sure, and while I know this is a game with nothing original to offer, and it's just the greatest hits of Sonic's past, both 2D and 3D, with some frankly amateurish level design at times. This is not how I saw it as a child. This was my Sonic game for years, and it saw many car trips. I love this game even though I know it is really just junk food and poor imitation of the other, better games. I love it so much I can even overlook how terrible the speed up shoes are in this game, and how it absolutely ruins the music because the GBA wasn't meant to produce sounds like that. Also, there's a cheat code to play as Sonic and Tails together, and it basically does nothing substantial. It's just like Sonic 2 again, and I'm only mentioning it so someone doesn't tell me in the comments but I forgot about it. Something else it seems like I forgot about but didn't was the Game Gear. So next video I'm making up for lost time with 2 games exclusive to it, Crystal Warriors and its Japan exclusive, but thankfully fan translated sequel, Royal Stone. There are 2 90s tactical RPGs that are not just Fire Emblem or Shining Force. Yet there are others out there, who knew?